I stood in the tasting room of my vineyard, watching the afternoon sunlight filter through the tall windows and cast golden patterns across the oak floors. The room smelled of earth and fermenting grapes, a scent that had become as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. 9 years ago, I had purchased this property with everything I had saved for my career in agricultural consulting. The vineyard sprawled across 47 acres of rolling hills in Sonoma County, a dream I had nurtured since childhood when I first tasted wine at my grandmother's table. My family had thought I was insane. My mother had called it a waste of money. My sister Bridget had laughed outright, saying I would fail within a year. But I had proven them all wrong. Through countless 18-hour days, through harvests that left my hands bleeding and my back aching, through winters when I questioned every decision I had made, I had built something extraordinary. The vineyard was now valued at $3.1 million, and our wines had won awards from Seattle to Boston. I walked through the rows of vines, checking the Pinot Noir grapes that would be ready for harvest in 6 weeks. The clusters hung heavy and dark, almost black in the fading light. My vineyard manager Diego had already left for the day, and I enjoyed these quiet evening walks alone. The silence was broken only by the distant sound of birds settling into the trees that bordered the property. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. The phone buzzed again, then again. Finally, I pulled it out and saw 3 missed calls from my mother and 2 text messages asking when I would be home. Home. The word felt strange. I had not lived in my childhood house for 16 years, yet my mother still referred to it as my home. I drove to my parents' house that evening out of obligation rather than desire. My relationship with my family had grown strained over the years, particularly after I refused to give Bridget money to start her boutique 4 years ago. She had never forgiven me for that refusal, despite the fact that I had been drowning in debt from the vineyard at the time. The house looked the same as it always had, a sprawling ranch-style home with a perfectly manicured lawn. My father's car was in the driveway next to Bridget's silver BMW. I parked behind them and sat for a moment, gathering the energy to face whatever drama awaited me inside. I let myself in through the front door. Voices drifted from the kitchen, animated and excited. I walked down the hallway, my footsteps silent on the carpet. As I approached, I heard Bridget's voice, high and breathless with excitement. The vineyard would be absolutely perfect. Can you imagine 300 guests walking through the vines, the ceremony at sunset by the oak grove? It would be like something out of a magazine. I froze in the hallway, just out of sight. My mother's voice responded, warm and encouraging. I think it sounds wonderful, sweetheart. Valerie owns that property, and family is family. She'll understand. But what if she says no? Bridget asked. You know how she is, always so uptight about her precious vineyard. She won't say no, my mother said firmly. That land is shared family property in spirit if not on paper. We raised her to understand family obligations. She has no choice but to say yes. I felt my stomach drop. I stood completely still, barely breathing as they continued planning Bridget's wedding at my vineyard. They discussed guest counts, catering options, tent placements. They talked about using my tasting room for the reception, my private residence for Bridget to get ready, my carefully cultivated grounds as their personal venue. Not once did anyone suggest asking me first. My father's voice joined the conversation. We should probably mention it to Valerie soon. The wedding is only 3 months away. I'll talk to her tonight, my mother said. She'll say yes. I'm certain of it. I backed away from the kitchen, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to storm in and shut down their plans immediately. But something held me back. I wanted to see how far they would take this, how much they assumed they could simply take from me without asking. I walked into the kitchen with a bright smile. Hi everyone. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. My mother turned and embraced me, her perfume overwhelming. Valerie, darling, we were just talking about you. Nothing bad, I hope, I said lightly. Bridget smiled at me, the same smile she had used since childhood when she wanted something. Actually, I have the most exciting news. Connor proposed last month, and we're getting married in October. Congratulations, I said, keeping my voice neutral. That's wonderful news. Thank you. Bridget clasped her hands together. We've been looking at venues, but everything is so expensive or already booked. Then Mom had this brilliant idea. I waited, watching my mother's face. "We were thinking," my mother said carefully, "that your vineyard would be the perfect location. It's so beautiful, and it would mean so much to have the wedding at a family property." 300 guests, Bridget added quickly. "In October, during harvest season. Just imagine how gorgeous it would be." I looked at each of them in turn, my mother's expectant smile, Bridget's eager eyes, my father's uncomfortable expression, as if he knew this was wrong but lacked the courage to say so. "Let me think about it," I said. Bridget's face fell. "Think about it? Valerie, I'm your sister. This is my wedding." "I understand that," I said calmly. "But October is our busiest season. Harvest happens in October. I have contracts, tours scheduled, a full production timeline." "Surely you can reschedule some things," my mother said. "Family should come first." I felt the old familiar pressure, the weight of expectations I had carried my entire childhood. My mother had always made it clear that Bridget was the favorite, the beautiful one, the charming one. I was the practical daughter, the one who worked hard and asked for nothing. Even now, standing in this kitchen with my own successful business behind me, I felt like the overlooked child again. "I'll think about it," I repeated. "This is a big decision." "What's there to think about?" Bridget's voice rose. "I'm not asking you to pay for anything. Just to use the space." "Just the space." I echoed. 300 people walking through my vineyard during harvest, using my facilities, accessing my private property. "It's not like you're using it that day," Bridget said. I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. "Actually, I'm using it every day. It's a working vineyard, not a venue." My mother stood and walked over to me, placing her hand on my arm. "Valerie, sweetheart, I know you've worked hard on that property. We're all very proud of you. But family is more important than business. Bridget only gets married once. This day is special." "I hope she only gets married once," I said dryly. "Given the divorce rates, one can never be certain." "That's not funny," Bridget snapped. I wasn't joking. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. My mother called daily. Bridget sent long text messages about how hurt she was by my hesitation. Even my Aunt Charlotte, whom I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, called to tell me how selfish I was being. "It's just one day," Charlotte said. "One day out of your life to make your sister happy." "It's not just one day," I explained for the 10th time. "It's weeks of preparation, disruption to my operations, liability issues, insurance concerns. This is my business." "Always so focused on money," Charlotte said disapprovingly. "You know, Valerie, success means nothing if you have no family to share it with." I hung up on her. The following Tuesday, I returned to my vineyard after a meeting in the city to find my mother's car parked near the tasting room. My stomach sank. I hadn't given her permission to visit, and she certainly didn't have a key to the property. I found her walking through the vines with Bridget and a woman I didn't recognize. They were deep in conversation, gesturing at different areas of the vineyard. I approached slowly, my anger building with each step. "Mom, Bridget, what are you doing here?" They turned, and my mother smiled brightly. "Valerie, perfect timing. This is Natalie, our wedding planner. We were just showing her the space." "Without asking me first." "We did ask you," Bridget said. "You said you'd think about it. We assumed that meant yes." "You assumed wrong." I turned to the wedding planner. "I apologize for your wasted time, but this property is not available for events." Natalie looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. "I see. Perhaps I should step outside." "That would be best," I said. After Natalie left, my mother turned to me with an expression I knew well, disappointment mixed with manipulation. "Valerie, why are you being so difficult about this?" "Difficult?" "You brought a wedding planner to my property without permission. You're planning an event without my consent." "Consent?" Bridget scoffed. "Listen to yourself. This is family land." "It's my land. My name on the deed. My money that bought it. My work that made it successful." "Family helped you," my mother said. "We supported you when you wanted to buy this place. You told me I was making a mistake. You said I'd fail. You offered no support, financial or otherwise. We supported you emotionally, my mother insisted. No, you didn't. I felt 9 years of resentment rising. You've never once visited this vineyard when I didn't specifically invite you. You've never asked about my business. You've never acknowledged any of my achievements. But now that I have something valuable, suddenly you want to use it. Bridget's face flushed red. I can't believe how selfish you are. Do you know how embarrassing this is? I already told people the wedding would be here. That was your mistake, not mine. So you're saying no? My mother asked quietly. I looked at both of them, these women who were supposed to love me, who instead saw me only as a resource to exploit. Something shifted inside me. I thought about their conversation in the kitchen, how they had assumed they could simply take what they wanted. I'm not saying no, I said slowly. Relief flooded my mother's face. Oh, thank goodness. I knew you'd see reason. I'm saying I need time to consider the logistics. October is complicated. But you will let us do it, Bridget pressed. I'm not making any promises, but I'll think about it seriously and give you an answer by next week. I called my lawyer the next morning. His name was Raymond, and he'd handled all my business contracts since I bought the vineyard. I need to understand something, I said. If I were to allow an event on my property, what kind of liability am I facing? Raymond explained the intricacies of event insurance, property liability, and the potential damages I could face if anything went wrong. For 300 guests, Valerie, you'd need significant coverage. We're talking about alcohol, transportation, potential injuries. If someone drives drunk and has an accident after leaving your property, you could be held liable. Even if I'm not hosting the event? If it's your family's wedding? Your property, your liability, unless you have ironclad contracts and proper insurance in place. You're opening yourself up to serious risk. What would that insurance cost? He quoted me a figure that made me wince. And that's assuming you can even get coverage on such short notice. Most insurers want at least 6 months advance notice for event policies of this size. I thanked him and hung up. Then I called my accountant, Linda, and explained the situation. Are they paying you a venue fee? Linda asked. They haven't mentioned money at all. They seem to think because we're family, I should provide it for free. Valerie, your property generates revenue. If you close it for a weekend during harvest season, you're losing money, tour bookings, tasting room sales, private events that actually pay. Have you calculated the opportunity cost? I hadn't, but Linda ran the numbers for me. Between lost revenue and the insurance costs Raymond had quoted, allowing Bridget's wedding at my vineyard would cost me over $43,000. $43,000, I repeated slowly. At minimum. That's not counting potential damage to your vines, any accidents, or the disruption to your harvest schedule. Valerie, as your accountant, I have to advise against this. It makes no financial sense. I spent the next 3 days researching wedding venues in Sonoma County. The average cost for a 300-person wedding at a vineyard was between $18,000 and $35,000, not including catering or other services. Some venues charged as much as $60,000 just for the space. My family expected me to provide this for free. I made my decision on Thursday afternoon while walking through my Chardonnay section. The grapes were almost ready, their skins thin and translucent in the sunlight. This was my life's work, these vines, this soil, this business I had built from nothing. I had sacrificed relationships, time, and my own physical health to make this vineyard successful. And my family thought they could simply take it whenever they wanted. I called my mother that evening. I've made my decision about the wedding. Oh, wonderful, she said. Bridget will be so pleased. I'm saying yes to hosting the wedding. My mother actually squealed. Valerie, thank you. Thank you so much. This means the world to us. However, there are conditions. Of course. Of course. Whatever you need. I need everything in writing, a proper contract outlining the date, time, guest count, and areas of the property that can be accessed. I need proof of liability insurance covering the event. And I need a deposit. There was a pause. A deposit? Yes. Given the liability I'm taking on and the revenue I'll lose by closing the vineyard for the weekend, I need a deposit of $12,000. Refundable if the event proceeds without issues. Valerie, this is family. We're not going to damage anything. Then the deposit will be returned. It's standard practice for any event venue. Days passed. My mother called back 3 days later, her voice tight. We've agreed to your contract. I almost dropped my phone. What? We talked to a few other venues, and they all require similar things. We understand you need to protect your business. Bridget is willing to pay the deposit. I felt suspicious immediately. This was too easy, too convenient. And the insurance? We have a meeting with an insurance broker next week. Everything will be handled properly. Mom, I need this in writing, the signed contract, proof of insurance, and the deposit before I confirm anything. Of course. Bridget will bring everything by next Friday. After she hung up, I sat in my office feeling deeply uneasy. This sudden capitulation made no sense. My family didn't give up that easily, especially Bridget. The following week, I returned to my office after checking the vines to find something disturbing in my email. It was a confirmation from a catering company thanking me for choosing them for my upcoming October event. I hadn't contacted any catering companies. I called the number immediately. A cheerful woman answered. This is Valerie. I received an email about an event in October, but I didn't book anything with your company. Oh, let me check. Yes, here it is. Westridge Vineyard, October 14th. 300 guests. Your sister Bridget made the booking 5 weeks ago. 5 weeks ago. Before I had even agreed to host the event. I'm sorry. Is there a problem? Yes. I didn't authorize this booking. I need you to cancel it immediately. But we've already ordered specialty items. There will be cancellation fees. Send those fees to Bridget. This is not my event. I hung up and immediately started searching my emails more carefully. What I found was infuriating. Bridget had been booking vendors using my name and property for over 6 weeks. She had hired a florist, a photographer, a DJ, and a rental company for tables and chairs. Everything was scheduled for October 14th at my vineyard. I called Bridget immediately. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice weary. What do you want, Valerie? I want to know why you've been booking vendors for my property without permission. I was just being proactive. I knew you'd say yes eventually. I haven't said yes. In fact, I specifically told you I needed insurance and a deposit first. Oh, stop being so dramatic. Nobody's going to get hurt at a wedding. That's not the point. The point is you've been using my name and property to make bookings without authorization. That's fraud, Bridget. Fraud? Are you seriously threatening me with legal action? I'm telling you that what you did was illegal. You don't have permission to use my property or my business name. It's a family property. For the last time, it's not. And if you continue this behavior, I will take legal action. Bridget laughed, a harsh sound. Go ahead. Sue your own sister. That'll look great for your precious reputation. She hung up on me. I called Raymond the next morning and explained what Bridget had done. She committed fraud, he said simply. She used your business identity to enter into contracts without authorization. What are my options? You could press charges, but that would be extreme. More likely, you send cease and desist letters to all the vendors explaining that the bookings were made without your knowledge or consent. Do it. Send the letters. Valerie, are you sure? This will create significant family tension. The tension already exists. I'm just finally acknowledging it. Friday arrived. Bridget came to the vineyard at exactly 2 o'clock, carrying a folder. She looked different, more subdued. Her usual confidence seemed diminished. I have everything you asked for, she said, setting the folder on my desk. I opened it. The contract was signed by Bridget and my parents. There was a certificate of insurance from a reputable company with me listed as additionally insured. And there was a cashier's check for $12,000. This all looks in order, I said slowly. Good. So we're confirmed for October 14th. Assuming the insurance company doesn't find any issues. Yes. Bridget nodded. She looked like she wanted to say something else but didn't. Instead, she turned to leave. Bridget, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. Are we okay? You and me. She turned then, and her expression was cold. We're contractually obligated to be okay. Isn't that enough for you? 1 week before the wedding, my mother called. We need to do a final walkthrough of the property. Of course. When were you thinking? Tomorrow afternoon. Bridget, the wedding planner Natalie, and I will be there. The walkthrough was tense and professional. Natalie asked intelligent questions about electrical access, parking, and backup plans for rain. Bridget barely spoke to me. My mother maintained a brittle cheerfulness that fooled no one. Everything seemed planned to the smallest detail. Too planned, perhaps. Security will arrive at noon on October 14th, I said. They'll monitor the property and ensure only authorized guests enter. Security. Bridget spoke for the first time. Yes. It's in the contract. I'm hiring professional security to protect the property during the event. My mother and Bridget exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. That seems excessive, my mother said. It's standard for large events. October 14th arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, mild temperatures, just enough breeze to be comfortable. Wedding weather. The security team arrived at noon as scheduled. There were 6 of them, all wearing professional uniforms and carrying radios. The head of security, a woman named Angela, reviewed the property layout with me. We have guards at the main entrance, the service entrance, and 2 roving patrols, she explained. Nobody gets on the property without checking the guest list. Perfect. The guest list should arrive from the wedding planner by 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, Natalie called me. Valerie, there's been a small change of plans. My stomach dropped. What kind of change? The guest list is still being finalized. A few last-minute additions. Can we just have security let everyone through for now? Absolutely not. That violates our contract. I need the finalized guest list by 2 p.m., or the event cannot proceed. Valerie, be reasonable. It's just a few names. The contract specified 300 guests maximum. If you can't provide a list confirming you're within that limit, I have to assume you're exceeding it. At 2 o'clock, no guest list had arrived. I called my mother, and she answered on the first ring. Valerie, please don't do anything rash. Where's the guest list? There's been a misunderstanding about the guest count. How many people are invited? My mother hesitated. 450. I actually laughed, a bitter sound. 450. The contract specified 300 maximum. We know, but we couldn't cut the list down. Everyone is family or close friends. Then you need a different venue. My property can't safely accommodate 450 people. Valerie, the wedding starts in 4 hours. You can't cancel now. I can, and I will. You violated the contract. The event is cancelled. By 3 o'clock, cars started arriving. I watched from my office window as vehicle after vehicle pulled up to the main gate. Angela and her team turned them all away. My phone rang constantly. I ignored them all. I saw Bridget arrive in a white limousine. Saw her face when security told her she couldn't enter. Even from a distance, I could see her fury. Then Bridget tried to climb the fence, actually attempted to scale the 6-foot barrier in her wedding dress. Security stopped her, and she screamed at them. By 6 o'clock, the parking area was almost empty. The next day, my mother called. I hope you're proud of yourself. You humiliated your sister in front of everyone she knows. You humiliated your sister by lying about guest counts and trying to force me to accommodate 450 people when we agreed on 300. We're done, Valerie. Do you understand that? Bridget never wants to see you again. You chose to disrespect me and my business. You chose to break a contract. She hung up. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Bridget's lawyer. They were suing me for emotional distress and breach of contract. I forwarded it to Raymond, who called me laughing. This is the weakest lawsuit I've ever seen. You have a signed contract limiting guests to 300. You have documentation that they tried to bring 450. This will be dismissed immediately. The lawsuit was dismissed 6 weeks later. The judge ruled that I had acted within my rights as a property owner. 3 months later, I was featured in a wine magazine about successful women in the industry. My father called the day it published. I read the article. It was well done. You should be proud. Thank you, Dad. I know we can't undo what happened, but I want you to know that I understand why you did what you did. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. My vineyard thrived. I hired more staff, expanded production, won more awards. I created a life that was mine alone, built on my own terms. Standing in my vineyard that night after blocking the wedding, watching 450 angry guests denied entry, I had felt powerful in a way I never had before. Not cruel, not vindictive, but simply certain of my own worth. They had expected me to break. I had chosen not to. And in that choice, I had reclaimed something I didn't even realize I had lost.